elements, what are they exactly? How would you define them, and how are we using those?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, since I started even at TractorZoom 3.5 years ago, the landscape is completely different. So it's a big topic, and I want to actually just take a step back. Machine learning's been around for a long time. People have probably heard about it. Data science was the buzzword in like
Right.
the 2010s. Now it's AI, now it's agents. The shift has been significant, but the underlying technology, the underlying models that define it, haven't been that significant. So AI is this broad bubble of anything that mimics human intelligence, and that's been around forever. And so when we say AI, we're really just talking about a tiny, tiny fraction of it, and that's really what's been dominating the headlines, dominating your inboxes. But really, we've been doing machine learning for decades. And here at TractorZoom, we've been doing machine learning since our foundation. And so all we're really doing is we're using data to predict the future. And so when we talk AI, most people are really talking about that LLM, the large language model, where they will ask a question and the model will return an answer back to them. That's what people typically mean when they mean AI, but that's even a smaller subset of just that overall broad AI term.
Is that why it's exploded here recently? Because it certainly seems like it has in the
Yeah.
last 2 years that it's just taken off.
Yeah, and so about 4 or 5 years ago, there's some just foundational shifts in the types of model we're building. That alongside the technology are to support the training and the serving of these models because they're massive. So it takes an enormous amount of processing power, memory, and so you're hearing a lot in the news about data centers and the explosion of data centers as well. That's all just to power these AI models. So it's a combination both of the theoretical, the understanding of how to build these models, as well as the technology and the infrastructure required to host and train them. But they're just so useful. There's so many different ways you can leverage AI, from simple things to do around the house to the enterprise sorts of things too. And so, yeah, they've just exploded over the last couple of years, and everyone's trying to figure out what can they do for me? How can I take advantage of this new technology? And what does it mean for my business? What does it mean for my business in 5 years? What do I need to be thinking about? So that's created more of these like existential questions, which I think is really driving a lot of the interest. Like, if I don't get on board now, will I be left behind? Is this a technology revolution that if I don't adopt, will my business not be able to function successfully in the next 5 to 10 years? I think those are the questions people are really wrestling with around AI.
Good. Well, that's one of the reasons why we had you here on the show, because we want to wrestle with that question right now. But what happens if you do or if you don't adopt AI? So everybody, thank you for joining us on this episode of Beyond the Hood. This is Inside TractorZoom. I'm joined here by Hank Mandsager. Hank, you mentioned data science was a big term in the past. Your title used to be data scientist.
Yes.
And now it is something different. Can you, first of all, just tell me what your title is?
Yeah.
But then also explain why that's adapted, and then we're going to get into this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the manager of data analytics here at TractorZoom. Like Andy mentioned, when I started a few years ago, I was the lead data scientist. And the shift kind of in the titles and the terminology and what we call things has been fairly recent. A data scientist historically has been, I have a lot of data, can I do something useful with it? And in general, we were trying to predict what's going to be true in the future, leveraging data that's in the past. And that hasn't really changed today, even with the large language models. That's what they do. They say, give me text, and I will predict the next word. That's all they're doing. It's still just a prediction. But because they're so easy to use, you don't necessarily need all the skills required, the stats, the machine learning models, the data aggregation and polling and engineering skills required, because a lot of the stuff is just available. You can just log into your web browser and you have AI in front of you. And so there's been a large shift and less talk about that data science piece. It's still important, but the focus has really been on, can I leverage these AI models? And I don't necessarily need to have a strong technical background to do so.
Okay. So let's get into this episode here a little bit. And like I said, we want to try to answer that question a little bit of, what is AI, which we've already started down the path, but also what if I do, what if I don't?
Yes.
And so a lot of our questions are going to revolve around that. And so let's start talking about dealerships. Now, when you talk to an equipment dealership about AI, where do most of them actually stand? Are they experimenting? Are they implementing? Do they, just fall into that, hey, we've heard of this phase?
Yep.
Where do you see them?
To me, it's been a huge shift, which has been really interesting. When I started, most dealerships were pretty apprehensive. They were saying, I don't mind the AI here, some predictions here, but I want the price prediction. I want that in my hands. I don't want you telling me what the price is. I'll tell you. I'm the expert. And that's been a really strong shift. So while maybe the technological advancements on the dealer side hasn't been there, the mindset shift, the culture shift of wanting to be more advanced with AI, wanting to leverage AI has definitely shifted. What I've seen from a process perspective, from a technology perspective, is dealers are moving in that direction, but no one that I've talked to has truly embraced AI and everything it can offer to help their businesses. But it's a challenging thing to do, even within TractorZoom. We're a data and technology company. AI still is something that we're working towards. It's not necessarily a finish line, it's a journey. And so a lot of dealerships have started, from what I've seen, but they're still pretty early on in that journey.
Okay. And I'm probably preempting a future question, but AI is moving so fast.
Yeah.
Do you think it's always going to be a journey? Is it moving so fast that we're always going to be playing catch up, which is a fine thing?
Yeah.
Is that the case?
It's tough. It's trying to predict the future. We joke on the team, like, it's almost pointless to build anything anymore, because in a month one of the open AIs, the Anthropics, they'll have that exact thing that you were just working on built for you. And it's one of those things where you have to change the way you think, you have to change the way you work, and it's that culture change, that process change, that really is the important piece. The technology will be there, but can you change the way you fundamentally think about doing your work? And then if you can make that shift, the technology will meet you where you're at. But until you make that shift, the technology is not going to be particularly helpful or useful to you. And so that piece of it, I think we will make that shift culturally, demographically, like, that's going to happen, and the technology will be there as well. So I don't see it being a thing that we're continually trying to chase. I think it's just we're in that stage right now where we're making lots of changes.
Yeah. And that's kind of good for this next question that I have about digital transformation, making that shift. I know you've talked before about digital transformations from data-driven workflows to AI-powered insights and decisions. There's a whole continuum that you talked about. First of all, do you want to explain, do you have to go through that continuum to fully adopt AI?
Yeah.
And then we'll get into the second part of the question about, in your experience, what's the stage or what's the area where people get stuck?
Yeah, and so everybody wants AI right now, and they want it to work and be perfect and just be no issues, because that's the promised land. It's like everything gets easier. And unfortunately, that's not true. It gets better, but it doesn't necessarily mean it gets easier. And so there's three kind of distinct changes that every organization will have to go through before they're able to fully adopt AI. And that first one you mentioned was the digital transformation. AI will not work if you're on paper and pencil. You have to have information digitized in a way that these AI models can access. That's really challenging, because you're fundamentally shifting where you do your business. Instead of being able to go check a piece of paper, something physical, you're having to log into a system. And that could be a really challenging transformation for a lot of organizations, particularly if you don't have a younger demographic that grew up leveraging technology. So that's a big change. There's a lot of things you're going to have to buy a lot of technology. You're going to have to change all of your business processes. So there's a really key, it's just a lot of work to get there.
Right.
So that's the hard, is it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of concentrated effort. As you move through, the next phase before you can really fully leverage AI is get comfortable making decisions with data. And so once you have a digitized process, you have all that data available to you to start making decisions. And this is a different kind of hard. Because when you're going from that business process on paper to digital, that's just effort. But the hard with the analytics piece is cultural. You have to start understanding that what I do in my little silo affects someone downstream. They are not going to be able to more effectively do their job because they don't understand what's happening here, because I'm not enabling that discovery through data. And so when you start on this analytics journey, what you're going to start realizing is my business processes aren't sufficient to actually be able to understand what's going on with my business. So it's another iteration of those business processes. But the challenge is you've got to break down those silos. You have to think about the system holistically. It's not just a purchase order. It's a piece of this process from sales A to sales Z. And so if you don't see things holistically, and if you can't get the organization to move in a single unit, you're really going to struggle to be able to leverage that data to make better decisions.
So this would be a little akin to somebody not completing or logging all their activity within a CRM.
Correct. Because they sit there in their seat and ask a very reasonable question. What's the point? If as an organization you can't communicate that value and that point and what it means to the person inputting the information, you're always going to struggle with that analytics piece, which is the third piece. If you aren't comfortable, if you haven't made the processes to bring that data in, AI is never going to work. If the data is messy, if it doesn't make sense, if it's not organized, all things that are fundamental to analytics, AI is going to really struggle, and it's going to accelerate that problem because it's going to be an agent working on all sorts of bad data, bad assumptions, and it's going to be moving faster than any person could. And you guys may be experiencing this now. Say someone in your organization leverages AI a lot. They produce reports, they get back to you in emails, and it's just a wall of text. And you're trying to read it all and trying to keep up, and you can't because you're not keeping up with a person, you're trying to keep up with a computer. And so if you bring that agentic capability, that AI capability, and you don't have the culture and the business process and the fundamentals, you're just going to accelerate problems. And so that's just the new hard is trust in that third layer. Do you have the system and processes in place that you actually trust the output of AI? Can you get there? And so it's just a different level of hard, and I haven't really seen any or very many dealerships be able to make that leap to be ready fully for an agentic AI sort of enterprise, that holy grail that tech companies are promising us.
So where you see people get stuck then, is it in the trust, or is it maybe the root cause back to that second piece of really, the analytic, framework of putting your data to work holistically?
I think it's the symptom, two sides of the same coin. The lack of trust comes from the systems not really supporting good quality data. People don't really think about setting up a system so that an agent or so that my analytics system can actually make meaningful decisions based off of it. They just say, I want to move this piece of paper or digital piece of paper from point A to point B because that's my job. But they really need to understand that decision, all the things that happen on that continuum are important for the business to understand so that they can optimize the processes. And so the trust really comes from just the lack of process and culture around good quality data.
Okay. So then when we get into the weeds here a little bit more with AI, LLMs, in the context of dealership workflows, what does it actually look like under the hood? Would you describe it to somebody who's not a data person with examples of how AI is being used within dealerships?
Yeah, there's a ton of examples, and we can even back out from the AI that we typically talk about. Let's talk about machine learning. So a lot of organizations have been doing price prediction for a long time, and TractorZim's been doing that since 2017. And so that's more of what I'd call a classical machine learning model, where you have historical market data and trends and larger macroeconomic factors, and that all rolls up into this model, which then tells you what that John Deere S780 is worth. Yep. So that's been a classic example for years. And it is part of different workflows, from appraisal side to the valuation side to the repricing side, in a bunch of different flavors. You also see that with some sort of forecasting models. Okay, can you tell me what things will be worth, or where is the market going in 6 months? Right. That's been around for a long time to some degree of success. Obviously, predicting the market's really challenging. But we're starting to see, with the advent of AI, some use cases pop up that seem to be really powerful. For high volume dealerships that receive a lot of online questions, having a really useful AI interface at the beginning helps give customers information. Sometimes the customer just has a question. Mm-hmm. Before, you either had a not very intelligent or not very powerful bot answering those questions, but now you've got this AI agent that knows the context of your dealership, knows the inventory, knows all this information, and is able to have that really good first interaction with the customer and then pass them off to a salesperson. So you're definitely seeing that in the auto industry if you've ever bought a car recently, but there are a lot of dealerships that are starting to look into that for high volume sort of transactions. And you see it large scale too on the OEM side, like predictive maintenance. That's been a big thing for a lot of the OEMs. If I'm piping in all this data from my machines, can I tell when parts will go bad? Can I have sensors on the equipment so like I can start hearing knocking or rattling or things like that, so that I can start to understand, is this about to go bad? Is this piece about to go bad? And be able to alert the farmer, alert the dealer, have the part available so that the time down for the machine is minutes, right? That's been another powerful thing, and that's been in a lot of industries from automotive to aviation as well. So those are kind of just examples. It's definitely not an exhaustive list, but interesting places where you're starting to see a lot of that value from AI, from predictive analytics.
Good. And I know in a future very upcoming episode of Beyond the Hood, we're going to be discussing with another industry partner about some of those aspects. So more to come on that one. Now, talking about where AI is already delivering measurable value, can you point to 2 or 3 dealership workflows where this is actually happening already, where there's, time saved, money saved in a dealership right now?
You're seeing a couple, and then one of our focus areas, particularly on the Anvil Pro side, would be kind of that sales workflow. So you're seeing customers starting to be pulled in from some sort of AI lead generation. Like, we think they're ready to buy. You're seeing that done at a dealership level. You're seeing it done at an OEM level to really try and understand the customer buying cycle and see if we can identify customers early that are likely to buy. And you can, once you start having and trusting that system, you can start placing that system in various aspects. On the appraisal side, hey, you're bringing this in potentially on trade. Here's 5 people I think that would be interested, versus here's 0 people that I think would be interested, giving you some indication like this might be a tough piece for us to sell. You're already starting to see as well, I mentioned a little bit that predictive piece, but when you bring things in on trade, you're not bringing it in that day most often. Right. I really need to know, what can I sell this for in 6 months? And being able to use some more of that historical data to really say, what should I pay today in order to sell at a good margin in 6 months? And then there's other things too on the dealership side that maybe wouldn't look a whole lot different than other industries. Everybody's checking their email. Everybody's looking for data. These are things common and ubiquitous across. And so things that we're doing is like, can we summarize some of that information for you? You're spending a lot of time reading, trying to understand, trying to decipher. AI is a really powerful tool to just give those minutes back of the day. It's hard to track exactly what that means from like a measurability perspective, but it's minutes at a time. Right. And those things add up. And it's minutes across every single person at every single location across every single dealership. And those sorts of things are really where we try and focus on. It's like, how can I give some of that time back to you so you can go do something more meaningful?
Yeah, I think about just the smart descriptions, and as simplistic as it sounds, is clicking a radio button on a comparable list, but to find a high-speed planner, and essentially having that AI work done already, where now I can have a subset of planners that was 22,000. Yeah. Now it's broken down into 1,000. Break it down by a model, and all of a sudden I've got the 10 that fit my criteria, and the work and just the wasted time that had to be done in the past of scroll.
And so like one of the jobs that you're doing is you're searching. You're trying to find that piece of information that you need, and AI can really help surface that much more quickly. So if you're going about your day, how many times am I searching for something? Whether it's a particular sentence or paragraph in a document, or from a transaction or contract, you're searching for a specific thing, you're searching for inventory. There's a lot of that searching that's happening, and AI can really give you just a single interface to go find that information, synthesize it, and give you exactly what you need to know.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting parallel when you look at parts and service, which we as Tractor Zoom don't get into, but on the sales side too, you're wasting a lot of time, or previously you're wasting a lot of time on searching. Whether you're searching for a part in your part room, or flipping through a manual to find the right way to fix a machine. Or for us, how we're presenting that information, so you're not searching through a database or even your mind and thinking through like who's a likely buyer or where is this comparable at. You're just cutting out that wasted effort.
Yes, exactly. You're still getting to the same point, but it wasn't something that was super valuable. It was necessary, but that was a lot of effort to get to that point. And AI does a fantastic job of helping out with that kind of job.
Okay, good. And maybe my next question is something we've kind of just hit on already, about getting from insight to action. Is it about that searching that we've done, or is there anything else that, because we want to get from insight to action faster. Is there anything else that AI is helping with besides cutting out the searching?
Well, I think one of the things is, and I've been in the data world for a really, really long time. The longer and the further away you get from being able to take your action to, or where you receive your analytics, your insights, and then that gap to action, the larger that is, the less effective the analytics. If I can give you a report every quarter that gets delivered to your inbox that requires you to read, synthesize, understand, decipher, and then now you're going to go reprice your inventory, that's such an enormous gap in terms of effort to get to the action that it almost just never happens. Right. And so at Tractor Zoom, we really focus on how can I deliver that insight, use AI to make it more immediately actionable, make you understand what you need to do, and put it in a workflow that's right where you're going to take that action. And so that's really where we're focusing on, and where AI is so powerful, is we can embed it anywhere that you're working, whether it's on your phone, whether it's in Salesforce and in your CRM, wherever you need this capability, it can be embedded right there. And so that if we drive that distance between insight and action to near zero, that's what makes the insight actionable. It's not necessarily that it's more accurate. It's not necessarily that it's fast or it appears faster. It's that it's right where you need it when you need it. And that's the important piece.
So, Tractor Zoom has had AI built for a while. We've alluded to a couple, but do you want to elaborate on where AI is kind of baked into different parts of our product?
Yeah, AI is everywhere in Tractor Zoom Pro. If you've ever leveraged Tractor Zoom Pro, you've been using AI knowingly or unknowingly for the last 6 years. We've always had an evaluation model that is based on transparency. And so you've always had the ability to see what the market's doing, but understand exactly what those comps are. And you've been able to click in and dive and build that trust with that model. So those models that really define what's it worth at auction, what's it worth on the dealer lot, and then now even with our sold data, what are dealers actually selling this for? That's all leveraging AI on the back end. Alongside that, we've got a variety of tools that help make it easier to start making those decisions. Particularly on the inventory side, we have inventory risk rating, which says there's a ton of information about the market. There's a ton of information about your inventory. You've got so many pieces of equipment, you can barely keep track of everything. Let's synthesize that for you and give you a simple 1 to 5 scale. So if anything else, you're going to focus on those riskiest, those 5-star, here's your 10 riskiest pieces. And we're saying, okay, you could be searching for all of this information and synthesizing the information and then creating a plan. Let's do that work for you. So that's inventory risk rating. In addition to that, one of the key things is there is so much data about equipment that it's almost impossible for a human to really try and capture it all and then also understand what's going on. So we built an AI model we call Smart Descriptions, which reads every single piece of equipment that comes across our database, pulls out the relevant features that really drive equipment value, and then enables you as the user to be able to go search. So you mentioned high-speed planner earlier. It will learn all of the different types of high-speed planner components, all the different brand names, and understand, is this a high-speed planner or not, and then be able to give you that really quick, easy way to search so that you get exactly what you're looking for as quickly as possible.
Yep. Nice. That's Tractor Zoom Pro. So with Anvil Pro, our CRM, talk to us about the sales intelligence piece, because this is relatively new.
Yeah.
And I know it's out in the wild, quote unquote, now, and we have a number of dealerships starting to use it, but it's just starting.
Yeah.
Okay, so explain this.
And so we talked a little bit about that analytics journey. So a lot of our dealerships that have been in the CRM space for a while are ready to start taking full advantage. They worked so hard to bring all of their processes digital. They worked so hard to clean everything up and make it available for analytics. But they need help to say, okay, what do I do with this information? How do I analyze it? How do I think about my dealership in this new way now that I have all this data? So the idea of sales intelligence is like, let's give you a single pane of glass that you can look at your sales cycle from A to Z. Can I understand exactly my funnel? How many people are we talking to? How many people are we performing trade assessments and quotes? And how many of those turn into purchase orders? Who's doing what? What stores? What categories are we struggling with? There's so much information out there. With sales intelligence, we wanted to synthesize that in one place so your entire dealership has that same set of data they're operating against. And that's why I talk about breaking down silos. It doesn't matter what store you're at or what region you're at. You're all talking about the same thing. And right now, a lot of the dealerships have these just plethora of reports. Some are the same, some are different. It's really hard to tell. You're looking at that number, I'm looking at this number. They don't agree. Which one is it? And that's that trust factor. Sales intelligence breaks down those walls and creates just that single source of truth for dealerships to be able to leverage. And on top of that, one of the issues with analytics in general has been, okay, I see my numbers are going down. Why? And there's that second order effect of like, I want to dig in a little bit more. And so with AI, what we've done is we've brought in this assistant that knows the data front to back. And so when you have those second questions, you have those really specific things, just ask the AI assistant. The AI assistant will do all that searching for it, will do all that querying, pull the data, synthesize it, and put it in something easy. So every time he's like, why is the number of quoted customers down? It can go and pull that information. It can say it's really driven by these 3 factors. And so it's just such a powerful way to bring the dashboards, the more traditional analytics piece, alongside with AI to answer all those deeper questions that you have burning. And so what used to be 20, 30 minutes of pulling data, bringing it into an Excel, turning it into a pivot table, now is just a 30-second question to AI.
And when you talk about those phases at the beginning about the digital transformation all the way
Mm-hmm.
to the analytics, you're really talking about helping people get from that second phase
Correct.
down to that third phase now,
Yep.
using that data.
Yeah, and then when a dealership brings in sales intelligence, that's like, why don't I have any activity? Well, you're not logging activity, or your salespeople aren't associating activity with accounts. And so they start to realize, like, oh, if I want the benefit of this thing, I've got to start enacting these processes. So it's a little chicken and egg problem, but at the same time, you can start to really see the value of doing it, and everyone on the sales team can start seeing the value. We're not just saying, hey, as a sales leader, you should start tracking your activity. It's like, hey, as a salesperson, if you start tracking this, here's all the information you can get. You can start to understand, where do I need to focus? You can start to understand of, like, where are my opportunities at? Where can I go and really drive more value? Where can I get more sales? But it only comes from really bringing that data into the system.
Right. Now that the data's in the system, and I know we've had these conversations with dealers on the call, transparency and trust is a really important thing. And it's one of our core principles at Tractor Zoom about being transparent and building that trust. So, do you agree that it's a big issue and it should be focused on? And then, how do you see the path forward going, to build up that trust with AI?
Yeah, it's a huge problem because AI operates. The AI we typically talk operates as a black box. You have no idea why it predicted that next word, why it told you that thing. It may seem reasonable, but when you multiply, say it's 90% accurate, you ask 100 questions a day, there's a lot of wrong answers floating around, and you do that every single day. Those wrong answers start compounding. And so 90% is not good enough, but you don't really know how good it is. And so then it becomes, well, can I rely on this as an enterprise? And so at Tractor Zoom, one of the things is we make sure that that assistant that we built will only tell you things that it can prove, that is grounded, and it'll also explain its work. It'll show you how I got there. So if you're like, I want to understand a little bit more how I got to that number, the AI assistant will be like, here's the data points I pulled, and here's the definition of those metrics, and it'll tell you all those things so that you can understand exactly how it got to that solution. And as you're building more and more AI models, it's how do I test this thing? The system that is inherently has some degree of randomness. How can I demonstrate and prove and rely on it being accurate in the situations that I care about? And that's a big problem with AI. It's not just a Tractor Zoom, it's not just equipment dealer, but it's across the entire country and across the entire world trying to understand that piece.
Right. Okay. So assuming we continue down this path, without giving too much away, what kind of AI capabilities are on the near term for Tractor Zoom? What should dealers be anticipating?
Yeah, I think dealers should be anticipating improvements in the Tractor Zoom Pro models and where we're presenting the information, how we're presenting that information from a valuation perspective. We've got almost a decade of data, and really we're primed from an organization perspective to start taking full advantage of that and being able to deliver more accurate price predictions all throughout the life cycle of the equipment sales cycle. There's definitely going to be some improvements in that space. And then on the Anvil Pro side, you're going to see lots of improvements where there's so much information in the CRM. How can we make it easier for you to understand what's going on within an account, within a stock unit, and make it easy to find that information so that when you're going and preparing for a call with a customer, it's a 2-minute exercise instead of a 15-minute exercise. You're not having to go through all their recent quotes, all their recent equipment purchases, what's on their farm. It's already all there. It's presented to you in just an easy to digest format so that when you're calling, you have all the right information, you know exactly what you need to talk to, and you're ready to go.
Right. Yeah. Think about all that value-added time that you could be having on the phone, actually engaging in the conversation.
Exactly.
And all that pre-work that's been necessary in the past. Truly non-value-added.
No. And it allows you to scale. So maybe you're a fantastic salesperson and you've got 40 or 50 customers. You've got everything in your head on what's on their farm, what they're looking for, what type of operation are, who they are as a person, how they buy. 75, 90, 100 customers like that would be impossible. You couldn't possibly keep all that information straight. And so this is that scaling factor. It allows you to be able to do more, but not have to do more, essentially. AI is going to take a lot of that busy work off your plate so that you can just go out and sell and do the thing that's the most valuable thing that you can be doing for your organization.
Yes. And I think it takes a lot of those newbies that are out there.
Yeah,
allows them
absolutely.
To scale and become a much better salesperson much faster.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of that from a training perspective, from a learning perspective. It's easier to find information, so instead of just saying, I don't know, it's much quicker to get to, let me find out for you, and 5 minutes later you've got exactly what you need to know.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about, obviously, the benefits of AI, but one of the questions that we led into this whole episode of is, what are the risks if
Yeah.
you don't? And so let's talk about that a little bit. For a dealer who's been watching from the sidelines, what's the risk if they continue to sit on the sidelines for the next couple of years?
It's tough because I think that's a natural reaction. I don't know what's happening. I don't know where things are going. I'm just going to play it safe. I'm going to sit back. The risk of that is not necessarily that you're not going to have a great grasp of the technology or the technology is not going to be part of your business. It's that culturally you're not going to be ready. And so once things kind of settle down from an AI perspective, this cycle of every week there's news on new things coming out, that's going to slow down. And the organizations that have culturally accepted this practice of experimentation, of cleaning their data and building processes around autonomous agents, the ones that have learned all those really hard lessons early, they're the ones that are going to be accelerating. And so I would say the biggest risk here is more cultural. It's not necessarily technology. The technology will be there. Someone will have the capabilities and everything that you need to run agents, but really your organization won't be ready for it. And so all these other organizations who went through the pain, who went through the discovery and the learning and all those things now, they'll be ready to take full advantage. And there's no way around the effort and work of just learning and building that culture. And so it's just going to take time, and there's no better time to start than now.
Okay. So on that theme then, and I've had a lot of dealers reach out to me and ask about how they get started. So you obviously made a point of get started. Yes. What are just a handful of steps that dealerships should be taking right now if they want to start going down this path?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I'm obviously listen to your IT security, listen to those people who are kind of running your technology organization. You're going to have rules and restrictions and things about which AI you can use, how you can leverage it. So be mindful of that. Don't just throw the keys to the kingdom in, an open AI and just let it rip. There are certainly consequences of doing that. But what I've seen be really successful is it's kind of those really small moments where people start to be like, oh, that's interesting. Like when you can get a lot of those moments across your organization, that's going to be the key. So at TractorZoom, for sure, one of the things over the last year, we gave pretty much just unlimited access to an enterprise AI. So everyone at the company, without really any questions asked, has access. And then the other thing too is we've encouraged sharing of best practices. Here's something that I learned. This worked really well for me. So on an engineering, on a technology side, we're constantly teaching each other like, hey, this worked great. I used AI for this purpose and it was awesome. Or I used AI to do this and it sucked. Don't try that. That sort of mindset and that sort of culture really helps breed that interest and that excitement. And then it also spreads out all the learning. So as long as your organization is communicating and sharing, like there's so much that can be gained from people trying things in a way that you wouldn't have expected. So we've got a really good technology organization so that it made sense for us to support that. It's going to be tough to say universally what you should do, but that's a great place to start is let people use it. Try it for certain things. Can it summarize emails? Do you have Copilot? Okay, let people use Copilot in emails, let people use Copilot within Excel. Start trying to learn what makes sense for you as an organization and start learning, sharing exactly what you're learning and what's making sense and what's providing value and what's not.
Right.
All those are really great, and then it'll start getting people's minds thinking about what they could do next. The jump to now doing it organizationally is where it's really hard. Hey, this workflow worked for Andy and how he does his work, but we can't scale that across all 70 people. That's a huge gap that you have to start closing. But it starts with people actually being motivated to leverage AI. If there's no motivation there, when you have to make the painful effort of changing business processes and culture, you're going to be really, really stuck.
Yeah, I find it, I don't know if ironic is the right term here, but in order to better leverage machine learning, you're suggesting become a learning organization.
Yes, exactly. That's the key to change in general, but particularly now with how fast things are moving, is if you're not enabling people to learn, to experiment, to potentially even make mistakes, it's going to be really, really hard for you to have the culture and the excitement and the willingness to make those efforts to become an AI first or AI enabled organization.
Well, Hank, at the end of every one of these episodes, I throw out a bonus question.
Okay.
And I at least threw this up on the screen a few minutes before we started. But you are recently a new dad. I mean, within a year.
Within
plus,
a year, yeah.
Okay. But not only just a new dad, but twins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your perspective, as all the new dads out there know, changes dramatically
Yeah.
when that happens. And at the same time that the tech landscape is changing dramatically. So now that you have this new perspective, what is your outlook, especially for your kids as they grow up with AI and whatever comes after?
Yeah.
How has that changed your outlook? What are you excited for?
I'll give you two. I'll start with what I'm worried about, and then I'll close with what makes me actually really excited. I think every technology poses a risk, whether it's cars, whether it's the internet. There's a lot of benefits. It's worth the benefits, but there are risks. One of the risks that I'm worried about with AI is our ability to learn. You have to sit with information. You have to sit with problems for a long time for you to become really good at it. And so on the engineering side, where you can see that, really good software developers are now exponentially more effective with AI. New and experienced software engineers, not any better, because AI is telling them to do all this stuff and they don't have that intuition, they don't have that experience to be like, that's a good idea, that's not a good idea, I like that, I'm going to just make a little adjustment here. And for an experienced software engineer in particular, that's great. And so for my sons in particular, it's what's school going to look like? Are you going to have that experience of sitting with a problem for a long time and then that real satisfaction of after an hour you get it, and that motivation to go learn something new because it's just so rewarding to learn something new, so rewarding to figure things out. With AI, it's too easy. The AI will just tell you. On the positive side, though, is think of all the stuff that we do that isn't very meaningful, isn't very fun, and isn't what we really want to be doing. AI is going to help do some of those things for us so we can just spend more time on the meaningful things in our lives. You don't have to sit and go to the library and go look at an encyclopedia anymore because we have the internet, right? So to actually learn something was so painful. Now with the internet, it's so easy. And so the fact that we have the entire world at our fingertips is just such an amazing thing. And I think AI will enable that too. It's so much. In one sense, it could be easier to discover things because of it. But then also all those things that we're doing, and you're even talking outside of kind of classical, but autonomous vehicles. What if you don't have to commute? Or your commute is reading a book, talking to your friends. It's more of an interactive thing because you don't have to focus on driving. There's all these things where I think it provides such a positive benefit, but there's a lot of things as a society we've got to figure out too from a technology moving so quickly.
Right. Okay. Well, on that note, Hank, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on Beyond the Hood. You can catch this episode plus any others on all your favorite podcasting channels. Make sure you like and subscribe, and stay tuned to our other episodes that we have, whether they're market trends, equipment insights, and our external guests as well. Take care, and hope to catch you on the next episode.